rather than a burden. At the time, it didn't seem that significant to me, but upon reflection, I've come to realize the conscious efforts made by my elementary and middle school teachers. I still remember them telling me to not be concerned about my theatrical nature, pushing me to participate in every single play and musical. Thank you to every single person that allowed me to be comfortable in my own shoes. It's a valuable lesson that isn't explicitly taught, but one that is ingrained in CAC's culture and my own skin. I remember sitting in the office with Coach Said, Mr. Seguino, and Madame Pascal. We were deep in conversation, trying to coordinate how I would be at a ME honor choir in Luxembourg and ISST swimming in Brussels at the same time. In this instance, it was physically impossible for me to be in two places at once, and one could argue that I totally overbooked myself. I would always hear, "Yusuf, you can't possibly do all this. Yusuf, pick one thing and stick to it." But how are you supposed to explain to a 14-year-old boy that loves swimming and singing, and happens to be good at both, to just pick one? So what you should worry about is taking advantage of every opportunity you're given. I could go on and on about all the opportunities CAC gives us, but I'm already running late. It is not something to look down upon. Ignore those who say, "Oh, they're trying so hard," and ignore those who think you're doing everything you can to just stand out. The experiences you gain from such opportunities heavily outweigh the extra stress and time that you're faced with whilst juggling multiple different things. Trust me, I know. If I had listened to those who told me to stop swimming and singing and work on things I struggled with only, what would I be? A mathematician? I bet Mr. Santowski isn't even laughing discreetly. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you shouldn't focus on what you need to work on, but doing that cannot come at the expense of doing what you love. Every single experience, whether it was negative or positive, has brought value and substance to my life and has enabled me to learn not only from others, but learn about myself. And now, to conclude my speech, with 3 years of English with Mr. Bynes under my belt, my Big Bang quotation is the following. A wise man once said, "Don't sacrifice what you're passionate about to please other people. Know yourself, be who you want to be, and don't let golden opportunities slip from your fingers, no matter how sweaty they are." Now is the time to prove to yourself what you're truly capable of. By Yusuf Shabet. Thank you. I'd like to invite my good friend Sanji Song, the salutatorian, to the podium.
I still vividly remember the day where I first came to this very spot, sporting my blue denim cap and my pink striped Snoopy shirt. Curious as to how large the Sphinx's nose must have been for it to have fallen off before the rest of its face. This was back in 2006, when my kindergarten self was full of uncontainable wonder, reluctant to abide by the rules, and still struggling with the concept of having to go to school. Fast forward 13 years later, I have shed my rather questionable fashion sense, hopefully, and like all of us here, have mastered secondary education. Despite this, I believe I still have a lot left to learn from my 5-year-old self. Indeed, our class has been through a lot. For those of us who have been here for some time, we've managed to live through many changes to both our school and this country as well. I remember in the 4th grade when we experienced the first of the 2 recent political revolutions, having to take virtual school via Moodle for a few weeks, and coming back to find our 5 classes shrunken down into 2. Not only did we have a student population change, but we also had a physical change as well, with our campus renovation. As a class of 2019, we were fortunate enough to be the first ones to use the new elementary building, and the first ones to use the new middle school building. Yes, we've encountered a lot of change, but I believe that this comes to our benefit. Thanks to this, I believe we've grown more wary, more adapted, and more resilient of the world we live in today. Personally, CSE has always been a home for me. It was as though the changes CSE has gone through were a physical embodiment of the changes happening to me as I grew from kindergartner to senior. I grew more competitive, diligent, and careful, as what happens to any child growing up. But CSE specifically has helped me become the person I am today. A young adult who now strives to yield a more open perspective, more welcoming of different cultures, languages, and preferences, and more active to impact the community in which I live. CAC has taught me to love differences, not fight them, to embrace changes and to adapt to them rather than resist them. We are the status quo breakers, winners of Spirit Week 2 years in a row, the record holders for the most clothes collected for our clothes drive, and, dare I say, the most united class in a while. The memories I built here for the past 17 years will be forever cherished, and this class of 2019 is the key reason behind that. But it is at times like this when I wish I could redon my 5-year-old mentality, especially from this point forward when we have to take on more adult responsibilities like living by ourselves, voting, and dividing our laundry pile into colors and whites. We're going to be faced with more seriousness, wariness, and overall apprehension of what the world has in store for us. But as we grow older and more mature, I would also like for us to remember our 5-year-old selves. Paradoxical? Yes, but I aspire for us to be adults who still have small but frequent moments where they revert back to their childlike selves, letting go of the world's apprehension and systematic way of living, and instead viewing their environments with innocent wonder, curious adventure, and an overwhelming urge to try out new things, regardless of where their comfort zones lie. And using this opportunity, I hope we all can take a breather from a constant race along the rather systemized path of education and career. For instance, I believe I speak for many of us here today when I say, regardless of how fascinating the subject was, we felt rather consumed by deadline after deadline for several assignments along our IB journey. At least, that happened to be the case for me. Only focusing on making the word count or getting another task done, and essentially lacking of the bottomless curiosity or wonder that I've had as a child. I love our class endlessly, and I wish everyone could learn from this mistake of mine and re-embrace these invaluable assets of our young childhood. We are a special class. I believe our unity, hospitality, ambition, and capability is one of a kind. And I think that this is why it's that much harder to say goodbye to you all, in fear of letting go of all the beautiful connections that we've constructed thus far. But now, it's time to adapt to yet another and changing environment. Like the resilient class we are, I am beyond confident that we'll excel no matter what. I love you, class of 2019, and I hope our futures will hold many snippets of our colorful past, filled with joviality, originality, and curiosity. Thank you. It is now my honor to invite Mr. Waldock onto the podium.
Good morning. What a relief to have weather that we can tolerate in the middle of June, as we all worried about this for the last month. I'm especially honored to be this year's faculty speaker for the class of 2019, especially since I've taught, I've coached, I've traveled with at least 3/4 of this class for one trip or another or one class. You're a special group. Now, over a career of 40 plus years as a high school teacher, I've attended graduations in gymnasiums, in stadiums, in hotel ballrooms, and as pleasant as those memories are, there is nothing that can match the experience that we have here. It's an amazing opportunity for CAC's class of 2019 at this ancient and historic site. The Sphinx watches over us. We've got the amazing backdrop of the pyramids. Definitely, this is a day that you and I will remember. Now, you seniors know that I've been teaching English for quite a long time, but I am not like Blanche Dubois in A Streetcar Named Desire who moaned. I have the misfortune of being an English instructor. No, for me, it is my good fortune to teach everything language related. And I hope you will indulge me as I turn to literature of the literature that you read for this commencement speech. Now, we English teachers select books that we think we can relate to the 21st century, despite the era that they might come from. And thus, indulge with me as I draw from some of what this class has read, which gives them instruction on how to live, and in some cases, how not to live. So as freshmen, you read To Kill a Mockingbird. And that's where we met Scout and Jem and Dylan, Calpurnia, and Atticus. And Atticus provides us a lifetime lesson that remains forever relevant. He said, you never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view, until you climb inside his skin and walk around in it. Obviously, we often judge people. We mistrust them. We distance ourselves from them because we don't understand them. So perhaps it's time to just imagine the other person and what he or she experiences and accept the person for whomever he or she might be. Now, I turn to Romeo and Juliet, and that's where we learn what not to do. This is kind of the advice of do not try this at home. Fortunately, you have matured beyond 13-year-old Juliet and did not marry at that age. Okay? And I trust that these seniors have learned that it's not wise to meet someone, immediately fall in love, and marry within 24 hours. But unlike Romeo, you are not fortune's fool. Take responsibility for your life. And perhaps listen to Friar Lawrence's observation. Wisely and slow, they stumble that run fast. Now, I freely admit that Holden Caulfield from Catcher in the Rye would not be my friend. While many students love Holden, the dad side of me wants to shake him, look him in the eyes, and say, grow up, kid. Take charge of your life and stop being a whining phony. But Holden did actually have a few things that make sense. He tells us that people never notice anything. So I would suggest you open your eyes to see what's around you. See the little things in people, in places, in nature, and in ideas. And oddly, Holden also said something that I think is pretty relevant to people in 2019. It's about speaking the truth, because as Holden said, if it's partly true, but it isn't all true, people always believe that something is all true. Now I turn to the junior year, when many of you read A Doll's House and Enter the Mind of Nora Helmer. And this is where I'll contradict my fellow English teachers and contradict myself, because there's a criticism of reading. Nora said, I can't be satisfied any longer with what most people say and with what's in books. I must think things out for myself and try to understand them. Now, from my perspective, we learn from what we read. We definitely learn from other people. But in the end, you need to think things out for yourself. Seems like a recurring theme of our English curriculum. Some of you experienced the Salem witch trials and the Crucible. And once again, a takeaway was, have dignity Be true to yourself, like Rebecca Nurse and John Proctor. Now, some of these seniors read of Gregor Samsa's trauma in the Metamorphoses. But I can assure you that it is not likely that you are going to wake up one morning turned into a monstrous vermin. Nor will you have the fate of Oedipus of killing your father and marrying your mother. I hope you are not like Blanche Dubois, who lived by the mantra, I don't want realism, I want magic. Well, you may want magic in your lives, but stay anchored in reality and take control of that which you can. As much as some of you may not have liked what Edna Pontillier did as her final act in The Awakening, she did hear some important advice. The bird must soar above the level plane of tradition and prejudice, and it must have strong wings. When you leave CAC, I want you graduates to have wings that are strong enough so that you may soar confidently into your futures. Now let me conclude with a bit of a reminiscence. It was 50 years ago this month that I graduated from high school. And I kind of realized that in the past 4 decades, I really haven't left high school. But you seniors have made my retirement year a special one. With your humor, your positive attitude, your generally hard work, and simply your friendship. Please accept my apology for the sarcasm, the teasing, the sometimes somewhat true stories that I would claim. But I'm going to pull my poetic license and say that I can get away with that. So, in a way, this is my final graduation as this is your first. And what I wish for you, the members of the class of 2019, is that you and I leave CAC ready to welcome whatever adventures may lie ahead. Thank you. And now I have one more task, and that is to welcome the graduation ensemble to sing Stand By Me.
Boom 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 chick boom, boom 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 chick boom, boom boom chick boom, boom 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 boom chick boom, boom 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 chick boom, boom boom chick boom, boom chick boom.
When the night is gone and the land is dark and the moon is the only light we'll see, no one will be afraid, just as long as you stand by me. So darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand boom, stand by me.
Boom, boom, shake, boom.
If
Boom,
the
boom, boom, shake, boom.
sky that we look
Boom, boom, shake, boom. Boom, 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 shake, boom. Boom, boom, shake, boom. Boom, 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 shake, boom. Boom, boom, shake, boom. Boom, 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 shake, boom. Boom, 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 shake, boom. Boom, boom, shake, boom. Boom, boom, shake, boom.
Stand by me, so darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Stand by me, so darling, 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 stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Stand by me. Stand by me. Stand by me.
Boom, shake, boom. Boom, 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 shake, boom. Boom, 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 shake, boom. Boom, boom, shake, boom. Boom, 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 shake, boom. Boom, boom, boom,
Stand by me.
stand by me.
Thank you to the choir. That was excellent. It was beautiful. I love that song. Good morning. My name is Jerry Dugan. For those who don't know me, I'm the high school assistant principal. As such, I get to introduce the student chosen by the senior class to speak for them at graduation. This year, that means I have the honor of telling you a little bit about Safe Heichel. Yeah, you can applaud. The best thing about my role in this ceremony is I know that when I end, it'll be fantastic applause because I'm introducing the senior speaker. If you know Safe, you know how much he loves CAC and how devoted he is to our school and how well he deserved the Service Above Self Award this year. You know of his passion for Model United Nations and how much he has meant to our MUN program, and that he was Secretary General of our spectacular 40th CAC MUN conference. But here's a story you probably don't know. The last 3 years I've gone to the MUN conference at Haya, called Hayamun, and I act as MUN director for a day for the CAC delegation. At an MUN conference, everyone gets a badge appropriate to their position. Students get badges that say delegate, or chair, or judge, or advocate. The adults are directors. So I walk into the lounge where the other teachers are, and I see my badge on a lanyard, together with the swag, which includes a leather portfolio and a notepad and a pen. And here Safe would interject to tell you that CAC's conference always has the best swag, which he knows because he makes that happen. Anyway, on the table I see another badge that says Safe Heichel, CAC Director. This was not delegate, not chair, director. This was when he was a sophomore. And I turned to Mr. L.D., the MUN director from Haya, and he said, Safe is coming to the conference as a director? And he smiles and says, well, we all love Safe. And that's the thing about Safe. It's amazing how he seems to know everybody everywhere. In my 30 years in education, I have never known a student who is so well connected in so many different contexts. He is the only high school student I know who comes late to a meeting because he got invited to have birthday cake with the janitorial staff. He's the only one who can tell you when his bus driver's cousin is applying for a position at CAC. He is the only high school student I have ever known who reads the minutes of school board meetings and who looks at Atlas Rubicon curriculum maps. He's the only person I know who has had a tweet liked by the Princess of the Netherlands. He's the only one who would arrange to have a 4-story CAC MUN banner hung from the top of the middle school building and notice 3 little dots way on the top and have to be talked out of ordering a new one at the last minute because he wants every detail to be perfect. There just isn't anyone quite like Safe. And his unique combination of leadership skills, intellectual curiosity, work ethic, dedication to serving others, and general affability have already taken him far, including next year to the prestigious Huntsman program at the University of Pennsylvania. I personally am going to miss Saif very much. He is the kind of student who makes working at CAC such a joy. I can't claim any credit for influencing any of his accomplishments, but I can claim one unique connection. I am the only person who ever gave Saif Heikel an after-school detention. And I won't say what it was for, using the elevator, but I will say he served it the same way he does everything, with enthusiasm and a smile. Please join me in welcoming Saif Heikel.
As soon as I learned to talk, the first piece of advice my mother gave me was don't talk to strangers. Little did she know that not only would 5-year-old me do the exact opposite of what she suggested, but that I would do it with such passion and vigor that it would come to define much of my young life. It seemed to me that anyone who wasn't in my family or in my class was, by my mother's definition, a stranger. So a couple of weeks into kindergarten, I started to feel confined to communicating with the other kids in Miss Rowell's class, almost feeling that I was imprisoned in a jail cell with 16 cellmates. I was trying to heed my mother's advice, but I knew that outside of my classroom prison, there was a whole new world. A world with other classrooms, with other kids, and with each new kid came an opportunity for new toys and jokes and games. One day at recess, I approached Mona and Alina and informed them of my plan, a blatant rebellion against my mother's advice. We rushed over to a kid from the other class, a boy who was drifting aimlessly on a swing. We stood in front of him, and on behalf of our small delegation, I proceeded to say, "Hi, I'm Saif, and this is Mona and Alina. We're from KGR. Do you want to come play tetherball with us?" Looking back, I think that was quite a successful interaction. Had we not rebelled against the system and invited Yusuf to come play tetherball with us, we probably wouldn't have become such a close-knit group of friends. I had proven my theory that curiosity and inquisitiveness go hand in hand. A similar situation occurred in my 3rd grade classroom. There was a new kid in class, and during our first recess, I walked up to him, shook his hand, introduced myself, and asked him if he watches Disney Channel. He responded with a much anticipated yes. I followed up with, "What's your favorite show?" And to my great joy, I discovered that his favorite show was also mine, The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. Looking back, I think Omar and I both agree that was quite a successful interaction. Had I not been willing to strike up a conversation with a stranger, I wouldn't have been rewarded with such a wonderful, lifelong friendship. As I became increasingly comfortable with the world around me, I started to understand my mother's advice had always been intended to keep me out of danger. She never intended me to avoid contact with others, and indeed I am sure that as both my parents watched me build relationships with those around me, it was with great love and great pride. I remember in 8th grade, I once again found myself with an opportunity to reach out to someone I didn't know. Another unsuspecting victim, if you will. On the airport shuttle to Hisar MUN in Istanbul, I told a girl that I liked her beanie. By the time we had arrived at the airport, the conversation had sprawled all over the place, from trivialities of weather and traffic to the intensely complex nature of diplomacy and politics. Looking back, I think Layla and I both agree that was quite the successful interaction. Had I not been bold enough to reach out to her on the bus that one time, I would have missed out on something that has been truly life-changing for me. An enduring friendship and partnership, each of us pushing and supporting the other to strive for our best. As the years passed for me at CAC, and I honed my skills of starting conversations, asking questions, and talking to strangers, I've made an effort to develop bonds with all the people that make up our rich and wonderful community. No one was safe. I got to know the general services staff, the faculty, the support staff, and members of the administration. I got to know people in our neighborhood. I did this with such zeal that after 13 years, I have become known as the guy who knows everybody.